You know what? Let's just do it. Who's ready for me to speak my non-native language? Bear with me because you know. So this one goes out to all the Eurobros, the European viewers. Shout outs to them. Shout outs to you guys. I'm gonna try to translate into English as best as I can. Devoir de vigilance. Comment sous couvert d'une table ronde, Total Energy tente de s'exonérer de ses responsabilités. So, the duty of vigilance. Yeah, okay, there you go. I was going to say, I assume that translates to something like that. How under the cover of a round table, Total Energy, which is a French energy company, I think intends or poses, positions itself to exonerate itself of responsibilities, basically, is what I think this is saying. It's using this round table to effectively say, to make policy changes or to lobby for, not having any responsibilities anymore. Quatre groupes, dont le français Total Energy, se sont rapprochés du cabinet de conseil états-unien TNEO pour fonder une table ronde pour la compétitivité chargée de la mise à mort du devoir de vigilance, révèle Mediapart. Okay, so 4 groups, one of them being the French Total Energies, were approached by a lobbying group from America called Teneo to create a roundtable for competitiveness or for competition, charged with killing the duty of vigilance, according to Mediapart, this investigative journalist outlet. So basically, they're saying, hey, how would you like to not have to do anything socially responsible? How would you like to, not have these regulatory obligations that you have to meet? And I believe it details later what these obligations are. L'Alliance aurait, selon des documents internes, coordonné des opérations de lobbying auprès d'élus comme de gouvernements à l'échelle de l'Union européenne. I forget what aurait. Okay, would have. This is would have, so it's that participle of avoir. Okay. This alliance would have, according to internal documents, coordinated lobbying operations towards elected bodies and officials like the governments composing the European Union. I forget what exactly this means on the scale. Okay. Yeah. So they are working to lobby governments that are relevant to EU decision making to strip away regulations and responsibilities that companies have. Le Parlement européen a voté jeudi 13 novembre le premier omnibus appuyé par la Commission européenne et le lobby industriel. European Parliament voted on the 13th of November the first omnibus put forward by the European Commission and industrial lobbies. Right? I think that means put forward. Supported. Okay, appuyé. Close enough. Supported by the the European Commission and industrial lobbies. Poussé par une alliance des parlementaires de droite et d'extrême droite, ce texte s'attaque au devoir de vigilance des grandes entreprises, leur laissant le champ libre pour violer les droits humains et poursuivre le dérèglement climatique. Okay, so those are the kinds of regulations that they're trying to strip back. So this, having been pushed by an alliance of members of parliament from the right and the far right, this text attacks the duty of vigilance of big businesses, which would effectively let them flagrantly violate human rights and pursue climate deregulation. So great. I remembered that climate deregulation was a part of it, but I forgot that they also mentioned, yeah, this droit de vigilance, or droit de, devoir de vigilance, the duty of vigilance includes like provisions that these companies have to respect human rights boundaries. Do they always do that? No, but the fact that the law exists to that effect is nonetheless an important barrier. And now politicians from the right wing and the far right are saying, yeah, businesses shouldn't have to follow human rights laws or respect any sort of climate considerations in doing business. Literally, just they should be able to inflict more suffering. Il limite notamment le champ d'application du devoir de vigilance aux entreprises de plus de 5000 salariés, supprime l'obligation de rompre toute relation commerciale avec un partenaire en infraction avec la directive. Okay. Notably, it limits the champ d'application. Okay. Champ d'application, the scope. Okay. It limits the like scope of application for the duty of vigilance to businesses larger than 5,000 employees. That's an important note. I'll come back to that. And suppresses the obligation to break all commercial relations with a partner that has committed infractions against this directive. So previously, there was actually a legal obligation in European regulations that if a business was found to have been violating human rights laws and like human rights protections and climate regulations, other companies were legally bound to cut commercial ties with them. Again, how consistently was this enforced? I don't know, but the fact that it existed was good. Now, what they're proposing, these right-wing and far-right MPs, or MPs and MEPs, is that, yeah, you don't have to follow these rules about human rights and climate regulations unless you are a business with more than 5,000 employees. Salarié means employees, wage workers. This would not apply to contractors and subcontractors, at least from the verbiage that I'm reading here. That's what I think the implication of this is. I didn't get notified. Oh shit, that's unfortunate. Twitch be wildin'. So this regulation that says, yeah, companies have to respect human rights laws, respect climate regulations, and cut ties with companies that don't. These far-right parliamentaries are trying to get rid of that regulation for any company that is less than 5,000 regular employees large. So 4,999 and then a shit ton of contractors that you don't have registered as salariés, as regular employees. Those companies no longer have to follow this doctrine, this legal doctrine, and they no longer have to cut ties with big companies that do violate this doctrine. So if a company violates human rights laws and environmental regulations, this bill, this package, which I think it may have passed, this omnibus, would say like, yeah, you can still do business with the most criminal businesses on planet Earth, where previously there was a legal obligation that you can't do that. Sparkling Image Car Wash. This is the French newspaper that I read every day to brush up on my French skills. And I'm guessing this has passed, given that they said they voted it. Transitive. Rather than they voted on it. I thought companies were just allowed to do stuff with evil companies. Only in America. In Europe, there was actually, prior to this omnibus, there was a law, there was a regulation that said if other companies have violated this statute that says you have to respect human rights and environmental regulations, other companies now legally have to cut commercial ties with you, you know? Which is a pretty cool regulation, not gonna lie. And so now they are just allowed to do stuff with evil companies because they got rid of that. Yeah. That figures into why I'm reading this, but I'll come back to that. Près de 170 pages de documents internes. Almost 170 pages of internal documents. Okay. Un tournant majeur, catastrophique pour l'environnement, qui a dû réjouir. Rejoice. Okay, réjouir. Okay. Should have figured by the spelling. Qui a dû réjouir la table ronde pour la compétitivité. Alliance des groupes industriels états-uniens, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Dow Chemical avec le français Total Energy sous la supervision de Teneo, entreprise de conseil basée outre-Atlantique. So this is Chevron, Dow Chemical, Teneo, an American lobbying group, and ExxonMobil and Total Energy are jizzing themselves at no longer having to follow environmental regulations and human rights guidelines. Ce groupe a multiplié les opérations de lobbying ces derniers mois pour torpiller le devoir de vigilance, révèle Mediapart, dans une enquête publiée mercredi 3 décembre. So what they're saying here, this group has multiplied lobbying operations in the past few months to torpedo the devoir de vigilance, the duty of vigilance. That's this legal statute that says you have to respect human rights, you have to respect environmental regulations, and if you don't, other companies are legally required to cut ties with you. So whenever you see devoir de vigilance, just remember those things. Le média d'investigation a pu consulter par l'intermédiaire de l'ONG néerlandaise SOMO près de 170 pages de documents internes provenant de Teneo. The investigative media was able to consult, according to the Dutch NGO SOMO, nearly 170 pages of internal documents coming from Teneo, or I think provided by. Yeah. Literally coming from Teneo. De quoi démontrer que l'agence de conseil états-unienne a élaboré une stratégie d'influence basée sur la quête des élus pro-business au sein des différents groupes politiques. Hold on, let me run that back. My brain is kind of scrambled. I will have to reread that. De quoi démontrer que l'agence... Wait. Of what? Okay, this is a weird way to say this, but this demonstrates that the way that they started this made me trip up. De quoi démontrer que l'agence de conseil états-unienne a élaboré une stratégie d'influence basée sur la quête des élus pro-business au sein de différents groupes politiques. Okay, this demonstrates that this lobbying agency from America has elaborated, has been developing a strategy of influence based on the quest, I guess this directly translates, but rather the aspirations, the interests of pro-business politicians that have relationships with different political and like politically relevant groups. Basically, this is just saying that like this is the climax of these lobbying efforts, and they've been developing this strategy for a long time because they hate regulations and they hate you. L'entreprise a par exemple fait circuler des recommandations de vote des amendements clés en main et des briefings aux assistantes et aux députés, rapporte Mediapart. Businesses, the business, I guess, business interests have, for example, made have done like circulations of voting recommendations for key amendments, and briefings to assistants and deputies. So basically, they've been like giving politicians and their assistants voting recommendations, basically saying, "Hey, we would really like it if you voted this way on this, on this like key amendment or this bill or whatever." And they've been briefing them. They've literally been like sitting them down and lecturing them. Okay, this is what this does, and this is why we want you to vote this way. And this is again according to Mediapart. And this is how you like. This is an opportunity for me to point out that you've got to understand, especially liberal politicians are the most politically illiterate fucks on planet Earth. The lobbying groups are literally sitting down liberal deputies, politicians, and assistants and explaining to them, okay, this is how politics works. This is how this bill works. This is what this amendment does. This is why we want you to vote for this amendment. Like, they don't, like, the reason they're able to do this, number one, is because these politicians are feckless and have no values. And number two is because they're so stupid that they don't understand how this works already. Yeah, and these are the same people that project that stupidity onto you by saying, like, oh, you just don't understand how it works. Motherfucker, I'm not the one who needs to sit down fucking multiple times a week to have some corporate lobbyist explain to them how an amendment works. You know? I'm sorry, that's, don't worry about that. Okay. So where right-wing conservatism reporters around the earth are like computer programs that you can't write code, that you can write code to, but you can't edit it. So they'll fight tooth and nail over something basic, like food not being a human right because they were told to, and you can't make them believe otherwise. Yeah, you have to like write something else on top of it. You know? Like, you can't edit the code that's already there, but over time that code will be gradually erased with their very short memory span. So you can like write something else on top of it. Yeah, I fucking hate it. It's like high school type shit. Alors qu'un vote en séance plénière. En séance plénière, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? In plenary session. Great, thank you, English language. I'm assuming this means like either a special some kind of legislative session. Alors qu'un vote en séance plénière prévu le 13 octobre s'approche, Teneo assume de vouloir diviser le centriste de Renew et les socialistes et démocrates via les délégations nationales. Ok. Alors qu'un vote en... Okay, so I think this means regarding a vote in a certain legislative session, previewed on the or yeah, this means preview, foreseen. Okay, on the 13th of October. This is very, very okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. This one makes sense now. Alors qu'un vote okay, it took me a second to understand the grammatical structure here. Alors qu'un vote en séance plénière approche, prévu le 13 octobre. So as this vote approaches, which is now in the past, Teneo assumes to want, or they're like they are pursuing to divide the centrists from Renew and the socialists and Democrats via national delegations. So they're basically doing divide and conquer tactics, trying to split Renew and the Socialists and Democrats. That's like the center and center left, right? They're trying to split those two parties from each other. And how they're trying to do this is both by going to each party and by picking them off one nation at a time. That's what that's saying. Via les délégations nationales. The members of European Parliament have party affiliations across countries, but they also have country affiliations. Yeah, they're literally divide and conquering to try to torpedo regulations here. They're trying to like nab the centrists and nab the socialists and Democrats, the center and center left, and try to say, hey, you know, we would really appreciate if you support this, and basically use national affiliations to their advantage. I think they get more into this later, but outre la mise en place d'une liste de noms, cette table ronde aurait envoyé des lettres à Ursula von der Leyen, l'ultralibérale présidente de la Commission européenne, mais aussi des membres gouvernementaux des États membres. Outre la mise en place. This is how you know my brain is cooked from not having eaten lunch. I am struggling to read. I guess this says like standing out on the list of names, or other than what list of names they have. One name in particular, what they're saying is that this roundtable of business interests intends to send letters to Ursula von der Leyen, who is the European Commissioner, right? She's let's see. Yeah, she's the president of the European Commission. So she's like one of the top EU officials. They're trying to get to her specifically. Why did I? My brain is so cooked. Why did I Google that? It says it right here. L'ultralibéral présidente de la Commission européenne. The ultra-liberal president of the European Commission. Man, I'm cooked. Mais aussi des membres gouvernementaux des États membres. So, as I said, members of government from member states. L'Alliance a multiplié les lettres ouvertes dans la presse, ainsi que les prises de contact avec des structures patronales comme le MEDEF ou la Fédération des industries allemandes, le syndicat patronal allemand, afin de défendre publiquement des positions maximalistes, résume Deneo. I don't know necessarily what that means. Maybe in context will make more sense. Okay, this alliance has multiplied their open letters in the press. They're using the press to try to lobby politicians here as well. Ainsi, as well as, okay, ainsi, thus, so thereby, great. Ainsi que les prises de contact avec structures patronales comme le MEDEF. So, with, as well as working their business contract, the business contacts with groups like MEDEF or BDI, which is apparently a union, classic trade unionism L. This is actually very reminiscent of neoliberalism in the United States as well, which is that the business class couldn't get away with, they actually would not have been able to achieve the kinds of austerity cuts and deregulation without the support of the unions. Afin de défendre publiquement des positions maximalistes. Afin, in order to, afin de. Because fin is end, right? Man, I need to brush up on my vocabulary particularly. My grammar structure is more so there. Well, also I have to eat food, but I can't do that because I have blood testing later. Défendre publiquement des positions maximalistes. So basically, I'm assuming what this means is a maximalist position in that we want everything. You know, like we're not going to compromise. We want the whole thing. And then the last paragraph here, profiter des désaccords entre États. Nationalism is a lot stronger in Europe than it is in the United States. So they intend to profit from discord among member states. Au-delà de l'individuel et du local, l'alliance industrielle s'est aussi attaquée aux États mêmes. So, at the level of individual and local, this industrial alliance is also attacking their respective member states. Chaque membre se serait ainsi vu attribuer des gouvernements cibles. Each member of this coalition, again, my brain cannot identify this structure for whatever reason, this grammar structure, would thus have been assigned, se serait ainsi vu attribuer. Would, so this is serait is to be, future participle, se serait ainsi vu attribuer. Ainsi is thus, I remember that. Se serait ainsi vu attribuer, been assigned. Okay. Attribuer is like assigned. Okay. Se serait. This is learning at the same time as I'm providing analysis here that I'll get to at the end for all the Eurobros. Chaque membre se serait ainsi vu attribuer des gouvernements cibles. So each member of this coalition is assigned a target country. For example, Total Energy s'est ainsi chargé de la France et de la présidence danoise du Conseil de l'Union européenne. Total Energies is therefore assigned or charged with France and the Danish presidency of Council to the European Union. So they're taking basically France and Denmark. ExxonMobil et Dow Chemical ont pris en charge la Hongrie et l'Allemagne. So ExxonMobil and Dow Chemical are taking charge to target Hungary and Germany. Notably targeting European member states that would be more obsequious to business interests to begin with, more conservative EU member states. Baker Hughes s'est enfin concentré sur l'Italie, connu comme soutenant l'effacement du devoir de vigilance. So Baker Hughes is concentrated in Italy, which is already known for supporting the effacement, or I guess erasure. Yeah, okay. Effacement is a word, but it means like erasure of the duty of vigilance. So Italy is already kind of on board with these business interests, but nonetheless, there's an Italian company that's in their ear. L'Alliance a pour cela profité de nombreuses réunions de grande ampleur telles que Davos, le Forum de sécurité de Varsovie ou le Forum de Cernobio. So this alliance of business interests, for their part, has profited from numerous reunions and meetings of grand standing, of grande ampleur. They're very grand, meetings, like Davos and the Forum of Security in Warsaw, or the Forum of Cernobio. So basically, these are the fucking Davos New World Order neoliberal fucks telling these countries, yeah, you should repeal the law that says we have to respect human rights and environmental regulations. And because of how stupid your average politician is, they're just like, okay, if you say so. Like literally, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these lobbying posters. If you're in America and you take a government class, you may be introduced to the kind of lobbying materials that politicians get. But legitimately, you have to be a moron to accept this shit at face value. Like, I promise you, what happened was not that much more complicated than one of these businesses. Let's say, for example, Total Energy or ExxonMobil goes to a French or German politician and says, hey, you should support stripping away this regulation that requires us to abide by human rights and climate regulations because, like, I don't know, it's bad for business and we would do better business and that would be good, I think. And the politicians are just like, okay, sure, I'm convinced. That is legitimately it. Like, these lobbying materials are not backed up by any kind of substantial data. I guarantee you, to the extent that they invoke data, the most they can show them is that, oh yeah, line will like go up maybe if you do this. And the politicians that like sit in these lobbying sessions are like, shit, that's good enough for me. Sure. You know, like, legitimately, you could say we should destroy public schools because that would actually be good, actually, I think. I am a private school business. You can trust me. And politicians will just say, sure, I believe you. You actually don't have to pitch it any harder. They are that dumb. Legitimately, it must have been a challenge for them to not laugh at politicians for buying this. You know? For the ones that they didn't already have in their pocket. Basically, if you've ever seen Blazing Saddles, all politicians are approximately that stupid if they are not socialists. Les néo espéraient ainsi profiter du faible mandat de négociation du Conseil et des désaccords entre États pour imposer sa ligne libérale et destructrice. So Teneo, this lobbying group, hopes that they will thus profit from the feeble mandate of negotiation of the Council, the European Council, I believe. Basically, like, yeah, okay, there's infighting in the European Council, and the mandate to, like, negotiate and pass something is really weak, so we're gonna come in and save the day by saying, hey, why don't you pass this thing that says, like, nobody gets human rights anymore, or something. And also profit from states not liking each other, you know, discord among various different member states to pass their very liberal, in parentheses, neoliberal, and quite destructive economic agenda. It's probably why they had to demonize us so heavily it's not even funny. Yes, that is why the left has to be demonized so heavily in order for them not to succeed, because most ideas that come from the left, most of the, like, hey, there should be more democracy and more freedom and more protection for people and, like, more sustainable economic practices, all of that shit is so self-evidently good, you have to manufacture political megastructures to convince people that, like, it's not. Which is why so many people get activated by certain buzzwords and why there's such a battle over language. You know, legitimately, the kind of propaganda that your average neoliberal or, like, conservative has been subject to has mostly amounted to planting certain sleeper agent keywords in their head that are common enough that you can just say it when you're describing a thing that's good politically and they'll freak out. Et nombreuses frictions au sein de l'UE autour de la lutte contre le dérèglement climatique ont servi de terreau fertile. Yeah, numerous frictions in the numerous frictions at the heart of the European Union surrounding the struggle against deregulation with regards to climate deregulation has served as a fertile ground to this effect. Yes, I have seen that. We can take a look at that after this. But I want to do this first. Les documents dévoilés par Mediapart permettent aussi d'apprendre que la table ronde pour la compétitivité a interféré dans la guerre commerciale lancée par Donald Trump. So, documents revealed by Mediapart permits us also to learn, or permits also to learn, French is kind of weird, that this roundtable for competition has interfered in the commercial war, the trade war started by Donald Trump. So basically, these business interests are trying to accomplish two birds with one stone, hit two birds with one stone. As my great granddad used to say, two stones with one bird. Thank you. That bird, unfortunately, now has brain damage. Where they're trying to deregulate the economic system in Europe even more, which benefits them, and undercut, in so doing, undercut the barriers to trading with Europe as American companies, right? They want to get around the tariffs here. But instead of lobbying the American government to, take away, to remove the tariffs, instead what they're doing is going to the European governments and saying, hey, you should do this thing that lets us do business with you anyway, while the right-wingers destroy the American economy too. Instead of undestroying America, they want to destroy Europe to get even more money, even though they could also achieve the same end of getting more money by undestroying America. But they don't want to do that because that's less profitable, probably. Like, maybe that gets them less money and doesn't allow them to, like, consolidate as much or something like that. Yeah, this basically... undestroying America entails giving people rights and protections, which would make them have to, like, put effort into not being evil. So they'd rather just strip rights away from somewhere that has more rights than America or something like that. At least comparatively in, like, economics. Continuing, Teneo s'est ainsi appuyé sur ses relations aux États-Unis pour faire monter la pression sur les négociations. Okay, so s'est ainsi appuyé. Yeah, I was gonna say leverage or relied on, right? But this is not the same appuyé as up here. Where is appuyé? Yeah, this one means supported. This one means relied upon. Okay. Grammatical context can change some shit. It's very weird. Teneo s'est ainsi appuyé. So, Teneo leaned very heavily on their... Oh, fucking hell. Language is a fascinating thing. I agree. So Teneo relied very heavily on their relationship with America for putting pressure. Oh my fucking god! For putting pressure on these negotiations. Nous leur enverrons une liste d'acteurs, députés, États membres, etc. à cibler. On par exemple annoncé des membres du cabinet de conseil au sujet de représentants états-uniens. So, we sent them or we will send them. Enverrons is future tense. Nous leur enverrons une liste d'acteurs. So, a list of actors, that is to say, deputies or politicians, member states, etc., to target an announcement that was made by members of this lobbying group on the subject of American representatives. So they're saying, yeah, we're going to do the same thing in America. So, like, as they're lobbying Europe, one of the things they're telling European politicians is, yeah, we're going to target a bunch of like we're going to target a bunch of other member states and also politicians from America to be more obsequious to our business interests or to be more favorable to our business interests so that we can still do business with Europe and they can still have the tariffs and, everybody else gets fucked for free, but we still make all the money. And also nobody has human rights anymore. And then all they have to say is at the end of that, and that would be good, I think. And then your average liberal politician is like, sure, that sounds good. You said it was good, so it's probably good. I hate these people. L'influence du groupe aurait été telle que... Wait. L'influence du groupe aurait été telle que Teneos s'est senti d'affirmer... What the fuck is this sentence structure? You wouldn't write this way even in English, let's be real. The group's influence was said to be such that Teneo felt compelled to assert. L'influence du groupe aurait été telle que Teneo s'est senti d'affirmer. Okay. The influence of the group was such that Teneo felt they should affirm dans un compte rendu du 1er août en réaction à l'annonce d'un accord commercial, holy run-on sentence, Batman, in a compte means like post, right? Rendu du 1er août, on the 1st of August, in reaction to the announcement of a commercial agreement to the disfavor of the European Union, en défaveur de l'Union Européenne par Ursula von der Leyen et Donald Trump. This announcement made by Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Trump. Whoever wrote this article, you guys are great. You have great political analysis, but Jesus Christ, learn to write a sentence. Devrait inclure le devoir de vigilance. Is this even a sentence? Hold on. Okay, yes, it is. It is a sentence. What I was reacting to is that the end of this clause and the beginning of this clause do not connect, even though with the presence of these dashes, that's what has to happen. En réaction à l'annonce d'un accord commercial devrait inclure le devoir de vigilance. If you take these two clauses and try to reattach them as a sentence, this is grammatically incorrect. But what they're saying is they felt like they had to say that, guys, don't worry, this new commercial deal will include the duty of vigilance, the devoir de vigilance, where you have to respect human rights and climate regulations, teehee, except for the part where what they're lobbying for is to gut this requirement so that the requirement no longer says that you have to respect human rights and climate regulations if you're a business smaller than 5,000 employees. And also you can still do business with businesses that don't respect human rights or climate regulations. What a run-on sentence. That might be the most difficult sentence I've ever read in French. Le 21 août, l'UE s'engagera effectivement dans une déclaration conjointe à faire des efforts pour réduire la charge administrative du devoir de vigilance. Oh, I'm sure. What this is saying is on the 21st of August, the European Union engaged effectively in a joint declaration to make efforts for reducing the administrative charge of the duty of vigilance, basically saying, oh yeah, there's so much administrative bloat and red tape with this. We got to cut the red tape, guys. I'm telling you, they can just say, yeah, we should scale back on respecting human rights and climate regulations, and that'll be good, I think. And your average liberal politician will be convinced. This isn't even your average liberal politician. This is Ursula von der Leyen president of the European Commission, and they said, oh, there's so much red tape in the requirement that we respect human rights and climate regulations. Why don't we get rid of the part that requires us to respect human rights and climate regulations? That'd be good, right? And Ursula von der Leyen just says, yeah, I guess you're right. That would be good. We live in a world run by absolute morons. Republicans knew the true deep state. They are the deep state. These guys are like, if they know at all, which if they know at all, which they have to, they are part of the deep state. But if they don't know, they are friends with like the guys that they fucking hit up every week to talk about, oh, this legislative item. That is the deep state. That guy that you're friends with that lobbies on whatever street for whatever lobbying group, whatever nonprofit, that's the deep state. Have you seen the funny phenomenon where left people have not touched grass? Sometimes. Yes, I have seen terminally online leftists. Many of them, in fact. Anyway, that's the whole article. Sorry. I really stumbled my way through that. Remember, French is my second language, and I haven't been able to practice actually as much as I've wanted to lately. That might need to be a project that I dedicate myself to later, that I find a more involved way to practice French, but I don't know when I'm going to find the space to do that. So why do I read this article? Why did I read this article? I said I saw it this morning and found it interesting enough that I wanted to bring it up later. But the purpose of me reading this article was not just that. I know that there are some Europeans that watch, and I know that Europeans pay attention to American politics. And this served two purposes. Number one, to remind those Europeans that this American is paying attention to European politics, at least in some small degree. So shout outs to you guys. You do matter in politics. Everything isn't just always American politics all the time, but things are very heavily influenced by American politics. Shit, as we literally saw in this article where it was an American lobbying group and American companies going to Europe, working with European companies to lobby both America and Europe simultaneously to strip back regulations for their own purposes, right? That's one reason. The second reason is I kind of want to put the Europeans in their place a little bit. For any people that watch my channel and enjoy my content, I'm sure that you are massive chiseled jaw giga chads who do not need to be reminded of this. Thank you. You guys are all great and cool. That's it. Don't worry about it. I'm referring to a lot of the Europeans who constantly refer to how stupid America is and how stupid Americans are as a method of like gassing up Europe. Like the people who constantly make a show how much better Europe is than America. And then you look at their political leanings and they're liberals. Those are the people that I wanted to see this video, and I'm going to tell those people, simmer the fuck down. You guys, yes, you guys do have single-payer health insurance. You guys do have better voting systems than America. You have better voter turnout in most of your elections. You have, for the most part, better education systems. You guys are not that much better than America. Just because circumstance has enabled the same system to be slightly less exploitative in its later stages in Europe does not mean that you do not still suffer from the same contradictions as America does. Fundamentally, we are in the same boat, right? Like, I know that Europeans think they're better than America and Americans, and they are, but not by that much. Like this backslide, the capitalist backslide, you're not immune from it. You're experiencing it just like everybody else. And sooner or later, how the US looks now is going to be how Europe looks too. Now, it's possible that like the US looks even worse by that point. What I'm trying to say is that Europe fundamentally, because of stuff like this, because of the fundamental relationship that exists between the ownership of these businesses, the private ownership of the means of production, to borrow from Marx, but like, You think about shareholders, business owners, people who have all this money, and who control all these resources, right? And who own all of this stuff, real estate, digital estate, websites, platforms, factories, and offices, and like shares of whatever company, and who have these portfolios, whatever. The fundamental relationship is the same in Europe as in the United States, and it is going to destroy Europe. In fact, Europe is even on like the same trajectory. They right here, this business lobbying group is negotiating with a German workers' union. You guys are at the same place that America was, possibly, or maybe not exactly the same. Obviously, there's like differences between the political climates. But this is the kind of stuff that America was experiencing about 50 years ago. Yeah, don't make the mistake of assuming that the kind of rampant austerity and like absolute destruction of the social state, to the extent that it even existed in America, is a thing unique to America. Shit, you guys are staring down the barrel of it right now. And who is the political vanguard of it? The right wing, the far right, and the centrist libs. Basically, I'm putting Europe on fraud watch, but not that much of fraud watch, because I know that there are plenty of socialist gigachads in Europe and plenty of socialist gigachads who watch my channel, so you probably don't need to hear this, but, And the people who do need to hear this, I feel like wouldn't listen, but, yeah. I don't know. I at this point, it feels like I actually don't know what I would say to convince somebody, because, you look at the kind of lobbying effort that they're doing here, and what they're saying is, like, we should get rid of human rights protections and climate regulations because those inhibit us from doing business. Those inhibit us from getting even bigger profits. Like, shit, it's not like these companies, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Dow Chemical, Total Energy, it's not like these companies are struggling to make ends meet. They have vast, vast reserves of capital that they can dip into, and they have an economic base that they can leverage to stay afloat if they're not like meeting their growth targets. Unless they don't, in which case that's also a capitalism problem, because increasingly a lot of these companies are propped up on a house of cards of rampant speculation and like a pump and dump scheme where the moment they stop growing at the maximum possible pace, the whole company collapses. Which, again, either way, this is a capitalism problem. The demand for infinite growth, either because like they just feel like it, and they want to see number go up, or because they actually need to. Either way, that speaks to fundamental breakdowns of the social contract that have to be addressed. Like, what is, if the stripping away of human rights and climate protections for the sake of profits is not like a breakdown of the social contract and a systemic problem in society, I don't know what would be. Does that make sense? And again, I know for people who already agree with me, that's not who I'm asking this to. I'm asking this to, like, again, some of the on-the-fence liberal types. This relationship is toxic, is what I'm trying to highlight with this article. And that even though, yes, Europe is in many ways much better off than America, this same toxic relationship, this society-ending relationship between a class of people, who own a bunch of shares in these companies, who sit on the board, who own the company itself, maybe in some instances, and who are lobbying for these interests and whatever, is fundamentally at odds with everybody, like the remaining 99% of people in society. And even to some extent them. I've talked at various other points on this channel about how like miserable billionaires are because of how socially hollowed out their lives are. And this would not improve that. This, in fact, would make that worse because it would increase the degree of separation between the classes. It would sharpen the class divide and make society worse for literally everybody. But hey, you know, the billionaires have more, have a bigger number in their stock portfolio. It's not even money in their pocket, you know, because their wealth has to be measured in abstract control over resources. You know, that stuff is life or death. And that needs to change. You know, no, literally, like, no one man should have all that power, you know? Or no 1% group of people should, like, have all that power, right? Anyways, thus concludes me simultaneously, like, dogging on liberals a little bit, but also, like, trying to reach the olive branch again. Like I did with that other video, the More Perfect Union one. Yeah, cut the segment, future me. Thanks for watching, and support the channel if you would be so kind.